The snow was falling hard that night, the kind that silences the world and makes every step feel heavier. And for Daniel Walker, it felt like the earth itself was trying to bury him along with everything he had lost. His boots were worn through, his coat too thin for December, and the breath in his lungs burned with every step as he followed the faint outline of an old road to the frozen woods. He was a veteran who had once marched with purpose and pride, now homeless at Christmas, carrying nothing but a torn backpack, a few memories he could not escape, and a dog who refused to leave his side. The lodge ahead looked abandoned, dark against the white storm, and Daniel had no idea that crossing its threshold would change the course of his life forever. Before the story continues, take a moment to comment, share, and subscribe if you believe in the silent heroes, and in second chances that come when hope feels impossible. Daniel had not planned to be homeless. No one ever does. Years earlier, he had served his country with quiet dedication, never chasing medals or praise, just doing his duty and coming home with scars no one could see. The war ended, but something inside him stayed frozen there, and the man who returned was not the same one who had left. Jobs slipped through his fingers, relationships faded, and one bad decision led to another until rent became impossible and pride kept him from asking for help. By the time winter arrived, he was living out of shelters when space allowed, and out of the cold when it did not. Always moving, always trying to stay invisible. The only constant was Max, a mixed shepherd he had rescued from a roadside years earlier, a dog with one torn ear and eyes that seemed to understand pain without words. Christmas had always been Daniel's favorite time once. As a child, it meant warmth, family, and the promise that things could be made new again. Now it was a reminder of absence. Streets were decorated with lights he passed but never touched. Store windows glowed with things he could not afford, and people hurried past it with eyes trained forward. On that night, the shelters were full, and the temperature dropped faster than expected. Max limped slightly from an old injury that flared in the cold, and Daniel knew they would not survive the night without shelter. That was when he noticed the outline of the lodge through the trees, its roof heavy with snow, its windows dark but intact, as if waiting. The lodge had once been a hunting retreat, judging by the carved beams and the faded sign half buried near the entrance. The door resisted at first, frozen shut, but Daniel forced it open with his shoulder numb by cold. Inside, the air was stale but still, and the walls blocked the wind like a blessing. Snow blew in behind them, and for a moment Daniel just stood there, breathing, letting the silence wrap around him. Max shook himself and stepped inside, tail low but alert, sniffing as if the place held more than dust and abandonment. Daniel closed the door and slid down against it, exhaustion finally claiming him. The lodge was frozen but intact. Old furniture lay under sheets, and a stone fireplace dominated the main room. Daniel worked slowly, fingers stiff, gathering scraps of wood and old newspapers until he managed to coax a small fire to life. The warmth crept back into his hands, and Max curled close, pressing his body against Daniel's leg. For the first time in days, Daniel felt something other than fear. He felt safe, if only temporarily. He whispered a quiet thank you to no one in particular and let his eyes close. Max did not rest for long. The dog's ears perked, and he began moving around the room, nose to the floor, then to the walls. He stopped near the back of the lodge where a large rug lay unevenly on the floor. Max pawed at it, whining softly, then looked back at Daniel with urgency. Daniel assumed it was just the dog reacting to a new place, but Max persisted, scratching harder, tugging at the edge of the rug with his teeth. When Daniel finally stood and pulled the rug aside, he felt his breath catch. Beneath it was a trapdoor, old but solid, with iron hinges and a latch that had not been disturbed in years. The wood around was darker, preserved somehow, as if protected from time. Daniel hesitated. He had no right to be there, no claim on whatever lay below. But Max would not stop, pawing and whining, his body tense with purpose. Something told Daniel this was not coincidence. With effort, he lifted the latch and pulled the door open. A narrow staircase descended into darkness. Cold air rose from below, carrying the scent of earth and metal. Daniel lit a lantern he found nearby and began to descend, Max following close behind. The basement opened into a surprisingly large space carved into the ground beneath the lodge. Shelves lined the walls, stacked with old crates and boxes sealed in wax. In the center stood a steel vault door, its surface scratched but intact, bearing a faded emblem from decades past. Daniel's heart began to pound. This was no forgotten cellar. Inside the vault, after hours of careful effort, Daniel found documents, bonds, and sealed containers that told a story buried for 70 years. The lodge had been used during a long-forgotten government operation, a place to store assets meant to be retrieved but never claimed. The value was staggering, hundreds of millions by modern standards, untouched, waiting. Daniel sank to his knees, not from excitement, but from disbelief. He had walked into the storm hoping only to survive the night, and now he stood in the shadow of a fortune that could change countless lives. The police arrived the next morning after Daniel made the call, his voice shaking as he explained what he had found. They expected a hoax, a desperate man chasing fantasy. Instead, they found history preserved underground and a veteran who refused to take what was not his. Investigators worked for days, verifying records and tracing ownership, while Daniel and Max waited nearby, housed temporarily by a local church once the story spread. The media arrived, cameras flashing, but Daniel stayed out of sight, uncomfortable with attention. He had learned long ago that loud praise faded quickly, but quiet integrity endured. What shocked the authorities most was not the money itself, but Daniel's response. He declined any personal claim beyond what was legally awarded for discovery, insisting the rest be returned to the government and allocated toward veteran housing and support. His reasoning was simple. He knew what it meant to fall through the cracks, to be unseen, and if his suffering could become a bridge for others, then it had meaning. The lodge became a symbol overnight, a reminder that even forgotten places could hold the power to restore what was lost. Daniel's life changed, but not in the way people expected. He accepted help, something he had once been unable to do, and with it came healing. He found stable housing, then work helping other veterans navigate the system that had nearly swallowed him whole. Max recovered fully, becoming a quiet mascot wherever they went, his presence calming those who carried invisible wounds. Christmas returned to Daniel's life not as a memory, but as a season of gratitude and reflection. Years later, the frozen lodge stood renovated, turned into a retreat for veterans and their families, a place of warmth where stories could be shared without judgment. A small plaque near the entrance told the story of the night a homeless veteran and his dog sought shelter and uncovered more than anyone imagined. Daniel never spoke much about that night. He believed the real miracle was not the money or the headlines, but the reminder that even at the lowest point, one step forward could lead to redemption. Before the story ends, share your thoughts in the comments and tell us what this story made you feel, because your words might be the encouragement someone else needs today. On quiet winter evenings, Daniel sometimes returned to the lodge, standing outside as snow fell softly, Max at his side. He would think about the man he had been, the road that led him there, and the unseen hands that guided him when he had nothing left to give. He knew now that hope did not always arrive loudly. Sometimes it waited in the cold, hidden beneath the surface, until someone desperate enough and brave enough was willing to open the door.